Well, good morning, everybody. Just arrived last night
from the target. First, on Monday, as the president has stated, on Monday morning we began to receive indications and warnings that a young lieutenant inside the vehicle, and you wait. You know that you're going to have approximately 2 minutes, 120 seconds to either succeed or fail. And then at approximately 12:30 p.m. on Monday, that's 7:30 p.m. in Qatar, as the sun sets in the west, Iran attacks. As the targets were detected, round after round of Patriot missiles are ejected from their canisters by an initial launch charge. Then the main solid rocket motor ignites. Officer was brought into a vault at an undisclosed location and briefed on something going on in Iran. For security purposes, I'm not going to share his name. He was shown some photos and some highly classified intelligence of what looked like a major construction project in the mountains of Iran. He was tasked to study this facility, work with the intelligence community to understand it, and he was soon joined by an additional teammate. For more than 15 years, this officer and his teammate lived and breathed this single target, Fordow, a critical element of Iran's covert nuclear weapons program. He studied the geology. He watched the Iranians dig it out. He watched the construction, the weather, the discard material, the geology, the construction materials, where the materials came from. He looked at the vent shaft, the exhaust shaft, the electrical systems, the environmental control systems, every nook, every crater, every piece of equipment going in and every piece of equipment going out. They literally dreamed about this target at night when they slept. They thought about it driving back and forth to work, and they knew from the very first days what this was for. You do not build a multi-layered underground bunker complex with centrifuges and other equipment in a mountain for any peaceful purpose. They weren't able to discuss this with their family, their wives, their kids, their friends, but they just kept grinding it out. And along the way, they realized we did not have a weapon that could adequately strike and kill this target. So they began a journey to work with industry and other tacticians to develop the GBU-57. They tested it over and over again, tried different options, tried more after that. They accomplished hundreds of test shots and dropped many full-scale weapons against extremely realistic targets for a single purpose: kill this target at the time and place of our nation's choosing. And then, on a day in June of 2025, more than 15 years after they started their life's work, the phone rang and the President of the United States ordered the B-2 force that you've supported to go strike and kill this target. Yesterday, I had the incredible honor and privilege of spending time with these two Defense Threat Reduction Agency officers who've given so much. One of them said, quote, "I can't even get my head around this. My heart is so filled with the pride of being a part of this team. I am so honored to be a part of this." To you both, thank you, and thank you to your families. Operation Midnight Hammer was the culmination of those 15 years of incredible work. The air crews, the tanker crews, the weapons crews that built the weapons, the load crews that loaded it. Before I run through this video today, I want to talk a little bit about weaponeering and what goes into an attack. Weaponeering is the science of evaluating a target. I mentioned all of those factors before that these two DTRA officers had thought about. Ultimately, weaponeering is determining the right weapon and fuse combination to achieve the desired effects and maximum destruction against a target. In the case of Fordow, the DTRA team understood with a high degree of confidence the elements of the target required to kill its functions, and the weapons were designed, planned, and delivered to ensure that they achieve the effects in the mission space. By the way, in the beginning of its development, we had so many PhDs working on the MOP program, doing modeling and simulation, that we were quietly and in a secret way the biggest users of supercomputer hours within the United States of America. So let me talk about the graphic a little bit. And the GBU-57, which all of you I know is a 30,000 pound weapon dropped only by the B-2. It's comprised of steel, explosive, and a fuse, programmed bespokely, each weapon to achieve a particular effect inside the target. Each weapon had a unique desired impact angle, arrival, final heading, and a fuse setting. The fuse is effectively what tells the bomb when to function. A longer delay in a fuse, the deeper the weapon will penetrate and drive into the target. So on Fordo, in June of 2008, you can see these 3 holes. Depicted here is the main exhaust shaft with 2 additional ventilation shafts on either side. The United States decided to strike these 2 ventilation shafts, seen here on the main graphic, as the primary point of entry into the mission space. In the days preceding the attack against Fordo, the Iranians attempted to cover the shafts with concrete to try to prevent an attack. I won't share the specific dimensions of the concrete cap, but you should know that we know what the dimensions of those concrete caps were. The planners had to account for this. They accounted for everything. The cap was forcibly removed by the first weapon, and the main shaft was uncovered. Weapons 2, 3, 4, 5 were tasked to enter the main shaft, move down into the complex at greater than 1,000 feet per second, and explode in the mission space. Weapon number 6 was designed on each side, so there were 6 on each side. Weapons number 6 was designed as a flex weapon to allow us to cover if one of the preceding jets or one of the preceding weapons did not work. The video I'm about to show you is a culmination of over 15 years of development and testing. As I said, hundreds of test shots on various models. This is one weapon. So in this case, the primary kill mechanism in the mission space was a mix of overpressure and blast ripping through the open tunnels and destroying critical hardware. The majority of the damage we assessed based on our extensive modeling was a blast layer combined with the impulse extending from the shock. Imagine what this looks like 6 times over. A point that I want to make here, the joint force does not do BDA. By design, we don't grade our own homework. The intelligence community does. But here's what we know following the attacks and the strikes on Fordo. First, that the weapons were built, tested, and loaded properly. 2, the weapons were released on speed and on parameters. 3, the weapons all guided to their intended targets and to their intended aim points. 4, the weapons functioned as designed, meaning they exploded. And we know this through other means, intelligence means that we have that were visibly, we were visibly able to see them. And we know that the trailing jets saw the first weapons function, and the pilots stated, quote, "This was the brightest explosion that I've ever seen. It literally looked like daylight." Let me now turn to the bomber crews themselves, give you a few details about them. The crews that attacked Fordo were from the active duty Air Force and the Missouri Air National Guard. The crews ranked from captain to colonel, and most were graduates of the Air Force Weapons School headquartered at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. I will state for the record that there is no beach volleyball or football at the Air Force Weapons School. They were male and female aviators on this mission. And a crew member told me when I talked to them on video the other day that this felt like the Super Bowl, the thousands of scientists, airmen, and maintainers all coming together. One last story about people. When the crews went to work on Friday, they kissed their loved ones goodbye, not knowing when or if they'd be home. Late on Saturday night, their families became aware of what was happening. And on Sunday, when those jets returned from Whiteman, their families were there. flags flying and tears flowing. I have chills literally talking about this. The jets rejoined into a formation of 4 airplanes followed by a formation of 3 and came up overhead Whiteman proudly in the traffic pattern, pitching out to land right over the base and landing to the incredible cheers of their families who sacrifice and serve right alongside their family members. Like I said, there were a lot of flags and a lot of tears. One commander told me this is a moment in the lives of our families that they will never forget. That, my friends, is what America's Joint Force does. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we test, we evaluate every single day. And when the call comes to deliver, we do so. I could not be more proud standing up here today of our Joint Force. I'm filled with gratitude that I get to tell their story. And as we stand here right now, our forces remain on a high state of readiness in the region, prepared to defend themselves. And one last thing, our adversaries around the world should know that there are other DTRA team members out there studying targets for the same amount of time, and will continue to do so. Thank you very much. I apologize for the length. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just thank you, by the way, for that extensive work, the lay down. I mean, even, do you have that laser pointer? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, squaring me away as always. I mean, even in just the public reporting, if you see the post-strike shaft of the 3 holes, the vast majority, and fairly so, the vast majority of speculation has been, those are the 3 strike points. When in actuality, what you realize is these are the vents, these are the caps, the first munition took the cap off, and the other 5 went down the center hole, which if you're planning the target, you would want it to be the direct one going to the bottom. These are the types of things that go in.
For the service of these pilots and everybody that serves. I wanted to ask you, the CIA statement said, when possible, they will provide updates and information to the public for transparency, and I believe that's what we're looking for here. Do you commit to share the Defense Intelligence Agency report when it is ready, so the American people can understand more about the intelligence assessment?
Well, actually, the report that was discussed, this preliminary report, was what's called a restrike report. So it comes to us to give us an assessment whether a target would need to be restruck, right? That's the reason why. So it's based on internal feedback loop that we're supposed to have access to. Unfortunately, someone took advantage of that. But whatever is supposed to be made public will be, but whatever has to stay sensitive.
Sir, can I just jump in? You know, one of the things that I'm trying to do through this journey that we're on together, of course, transparency, but also the requirement to really protect these capabilities. I guess the time's up. So there's a balance in there, right? We do need to preserve options should the nation and the Joint Force be tasked to go do something again. So I'm confident we'll find the middle ground, but there are some things that if asked, I'd want to not release related to.
So we're going to leave it right there. I want to thank the heroism of our men and women in the military. What they accomplished is truly historic. Setting back the Iranian nuclear program, untold number of years. It was a devastating attack. We appreciate you covering it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Talk a little bit more about the role, sir.